Yeah, come on in and have a seat. Yeah, any place. Hey, I was doing a lot of roof and gutter work, and I was working for a gutter company, and they said, we have a squirrel hole that we need to have closed. I said, well, no problem, I'll close it up. So I'm bending down to measure it, and the squirrel comes shooting out. So I said, wait a minute, I better learn what's going on. So then that job, I worked on another job up the street, okay? And I'm doing this thinking that it's going to be simple. And at the time I didn't know anything. I was shooting mothballs in the hole, and I came back and the mothballs were all over the pavement outside. I said, how did that happen? They were picking up the mothballs and throwing them out, So then I finally ended up just closing it up, and that worked out fine, okay? But that was a short term. I was on a job one time troubleshooting a water problem where water was coming out of a gutter and going down over a sliding glass doors, and then finally narrowed it down to a hole in the downspout, which I thought was unbelievable. So I asked the woman, the owner of the house, I said, how can this possibly be? I saw chew marks in it and little chips. So she said, oh yeah, we've been listening to that for 2 months. I said, are you kidding me? After this article, the real problem started up. I mean, because people, they came out of the woodwork. That job there for that large house, they didn't tell me at first, that's like a 35-year problem. They were setting me up. I said, okay. I said, you think you can solve this problem? So I went there, and I couldn't. I said, this is crazy. I said, so I drove away. And then about a month later, I got the idea, touch, taste, sound, smell, what would really annoy them, and annoy them enough to push them out of the attic. That's where the strobe light. So I experimented with how many it took and where to put them. Absolutely leave them on continuously. What you want to do, I come to these conclusions. You want to push them out, first of all. You want to something so obnoxious that you let them come and go as often as they want to come and go. They're coming in, they're coming out. Okay, but now you've got a light in there, it's perfectly dark, and you're really ticking them off. It's so obnoxious, they say, I don't want to stay there. I'll give you a feel for what this is all about, what I do. Okay, this is 2 holes in an attic. There was no other holes in the attic, and they usually have an entrance and an exit, and I guess they thought they would make the top an exit. They were both punched right through the screen. Now there's a story on this. This guy built his own house, and he took great pride in telling me. The contractor had built the drawers into the walls, and when I got there, the caretaker said that there was a nest beside the socks in the drawers. So they had a hold of that house. They were coming through an attic vent fan. So I took the vent fan off. I mean, it was all crumbled, and I left clear plastic there, and then put strobe lights in. I thought, well, I'm going to drive them out, and I knew exactly what would happen, because this is that old type of yellow plastic. Well, I thought they would just make a little hole and burst through. They destroyed it. They get vengeful when they get, so they just ripped it apart. They really get that way. Okay, this is the simplest problem there is. Only existed for a week or two. I went there, I figured out, she was telling me where the noise was. It was right around a bathroom area. This is a bathroom exhaust vent. I said, this is it. I'll just cover it, and I put a screen over top of it, problem done. A hole here actually still exists. This, because they had a long opening between the roof deck and the fascia board. So when I even messed with that a little bit, they created another hole. So here, that's when I came to the conclusion, I'll just let them go in and out as much as I want. But I put 2 strobe lights in there, blew them out, so now they didn't want to be there. So this hole was actually pretty much the same way as it was 10 years ago when I did it. And then she'll call me up and say, I hear a little bit. I said, fine, I'll be over, replace the bulbs. So the name of the game is for her, because this house was attached to another house, and the other house had the problem. But all she wanted to do is get them out of her house. So solve the problem.
That doesn't leak?
Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay. Well, you know what I did? I slid tin underneath the shingle, so it didn't leak. I had read Rhonda Hard's book, and she had mentioned that For the Birds Goo, and I ended up using the For the Birds Goo like to discourage them. So anyway, over the years, I refined that, and I call it a goo tunnel. And so what I'll do is, and I ended up doing this job, is I want to monitor them. You can't monitor them. You don't know where they're coming and going there. So I'll put a tunnel up there, and I usually have it this way, and light coating. And I let it keep going in and out, in and out. Now, if you have just a soffit problem, this will solve it, and they haven't gone from the soffit to any place else. this will actually solve the problem. If they're going into the side of the house, into a wall, that solves the problem. They're tracking this slowly into the area where they inhabit, especially the nest. And that solves the problem, because they get tired of the goo on them. They hate the goo. They had squirrels in this church, and how they found that out was that they had the speaker system go down. So the maintenance guy called me up and says, we have squirrels, and I had gotten referred to from another pest control company. They said, look, we don't know what we're doing, we'll just give it to you, okay? So I went in there, and yeah, that's what they do. They said they walk away from it, the job, So I go in there, and what I did was inspect the place, and part of the inspection I said, you have a hole up on you see that in the vent, okay? A large attic. It was really tough to navigate through that attic. And being by the size of the nest, we estimated about 20 years. It was heavily wooded area behind the church. It had no nest. That tells me right away that if there's no nest in the wooded area, that the problem's been going on for a while. They're comfortable in that church. I found there were 2 holes. Almost always there were 2 holes. And how I knew that was a secondary one, because it was hard to get to. Even for the squirrels, they have to go inverted to go out of it, you see. Now, this is the main entrance. Now, how I found that out was I got feedback from the maintenance guy there. He said the guys that were redoing the wires, they said they'd go down into the back of the church. I said, okay, I'll check out all along that where you're telling me. And this is what I found out. Now, here's the nest. That there had been taking the straw from the nativity scene for 20 years and building it up there. And if you look real close, you can see that there is the speaker wire wrapped. They made it part of the nest, In fact, when I was going through the attic, I said, why is there a bale of hay in the attic? And they said, oh, by the way, that's the nest. I said, what? Okay, chewed wires. I told the maintenance guy, Bob, I said, look, you got to get this fixed because you have them going anywhere they want to in the attic, chewing on the wires.
Why do they like to chew on it?
Sometimes now I've been told that the Romax actually has banana oil in it, and they like the banana oil.
They're goers. They're going to chew on.
Yeah, they know they're going to chew. Yeah.
Chew on the wood. They chew on wires. Whatever they get to, they're going to chew.
Yeah. I only installed 2 here. Now this was a special situation, okay? Because you have a large 12,000-foot attic for a church, so you can't put strobe lights everywhere in the church. It's just impractical, okay? I modified this. You see it sitting in the corner? That's the same. If you have a big hole, there's no way to monitor their coming and going, whether you're doing, you're actually succeeding in evicting them. You don't know if the hole is that big. So by taking this, and I coat it with a little bit, I can then, I can see by the fur that's being left behind whether they have been coming or going. And actually, that's how I know I've succeeded. If I close it down further and further and it's not touched, I've won. See, if they normally have 2 holes, the only way you can monitor their behavior is to have one hole completely closed off. So a new fan was put in there. Now I knew I had just one hole, but a church being that big, I didn't want them to start popping other holes in the roof someplace, So I thought I'll let them come and go as much as I want, and then increase the gel, a little bit of gel, then increase it every 2 or 3 days. Finally, I increased it so much as only a little hole like this, and I see the traffic stop. That means they've given up on that location. And then as they went back and forth, they're I'm going back there every 2 or 3 days. They're cleaning the gel off there, like the goo off that. And if they're cleaning it off, they're taking it back to the nest. They're taking it back to the nest. They're making that nest uninhabitable. So you can get by then with a lesser quantity of strobe lights if you use this method and you're monitoring their behavior, see? This is how I know the problem's over. There's no more chewing going on. They built a large nest in the church. Never saw it before. Huge nest, about like this. And no squirrel activity through the goo tunnel. Okay, I've won now. You know, the job's finished.
Do the squirrels ever come back like to the same area or a different area of the house?
It's exactly what I did at the house. Okay, this was the second test case, okay? I blew them out of there with the strobe lights, and it was almost like they became psychotic. They were coming by and they were chewing. They never chewed anywhere on the front. It was always like under here on the back side on one of these screens, or vents. They were chewing everywhere, just like a couple bites out of it. They were so crazy because they didn't want to go through. In this case, there was no goo tunnel. I just blew them right out. And then I put a tube, which is still there, in the soffit that extends way down. So if they were in there, they could get out, but then couldn't get back in again. You know, that was the idea there. So this is kind of a special case. But I didn't know exactly which way I was doing it. So I put lights in there in the beginning and just blew them out and had some place for them to go, to a way to get out. So, but they did come back and chew crazy, you know. This I just did last summer. They had popped holes through the soffits, okay? And they were gonna let the contractors take care of it. I said, when the contractors are gone, I'll come on the job. So I went around one night and I counted the nests that were in the soffit. There was 9 nests in the soffit. So they had control of this house. So finally, 9 nests. So I came, so I said, you let the contractors do their thing. I said, but keep one thing in mind. If they get this all sealed up and they've done the job really well and they constructed the work in the soffit really firmly, you have an edible roof. This is a cedar shake roof, same thing as yours. I had to be real careful because if I made it so I sealed it up and they couldn't get in anymore where their normal places were in the gable vents, they're going to come right through the roof. And this is a $140,000 roof, so you don't want them to come through the roof. And so I went and started with each soffit. And I had special goo tunnels that were like this, and then there was a cage, and then there was a hole, and I would let them go in and then up in the hole easily. You know, I would go in there. Put 5 lights in one attic, another light in another attic, and another light in another soffit. And finally, they let go of the house. They were vicious there. They were chewing seriously. So I let them come and go, same thing. I let them come into the attic, say, I don't think so, and leave again. So that's the whole idea, is to create a hell for them. Come in, I don't think so, and leave again. So people will say, sometime old jobs that I've done, I hear them for a couple minutes. I said, go check your bulb to make sure the bulb is actually, and that's why we know it's a successful product, because people order bulbs. Why would they order the bulbs if it wasn't working? So it works. Does anybody have a question? Yes.
They're eating the door of my shed.
Ropel. It's a spray, and you just spray the heck out of it with Ropel. Sometimes when they're chewing through a rooftop, they're on the shingles on the roof, I just spray the whole roof with Ropel because it tastes very bad to them, Pardon me?
Pepper spray or something?
Well, you can use pepper spray, but I think Ropel was more powerful, more permanent,
Strobe in the shed?
Yeah, you know what? You can't put them. We sold one time to somebody out in California, and you have to watch if you put them in the shed, and the light can go out of the shed into the sky, because they had the sheriff there complaining that the aircraft thought it was a downed aircraft. That's how powerful this is.
So, what size hole does it have to be for a squirrel?
This is about the size. And it's kind of ridiculous because they make almost the same size hole. This is gray squirrels. In every place they've gone, they make a hole, and you can guess that it's going to be this big. Now the difference is in this, a gray squirrel and a flying squirrel closes down to about like that. And flying squirrel will actually pick up shingles and come in underneath. Does anybody have a flying squirrel problem?
That's really crazy.
Oh, okay. Now the thing with the flying squirrel is they're much more. If you use a strobe light, it's better at evicting them than even the gray squirrel, because their eyes are more light sensitive, you see. Yeah. And some of the jobs, I've never found the holes for a flying squirrel because they're so small.
So where do you put the strobes?
You put them wherever you're hearing, first of all, wherever you hear them, You have like a bedroom, I hear them there, put the strobe light there first. And there's one job I do off of King of Prussia Road, actually, where I have 6 lights up there, and every once in a while I go replace the bulbs. I never found a hole. He didn't either. But I just drove him out of the house. That's the idea, is just drive him out.
If you don't have an attic,
Well, where's your problem?
in the space between the ceiling and the roof, there's no attic. It's a,
Oh, okay. You can do that once in a while. You can simply embed it if it's bad enough. You can embed this or cut a hole, an access panel, and put it up in there, if you hear them. Now, that's not the guarantee that the problem will be solved, immediately. But sometimes in there, you like to put it in an area where they're traveling. I did that one time with a farmhouse in Boyertown. They were traveling through the a ceiling in the kitchen, okay, and it was horrendous problem, and so I ended up embedding it right in the ceiling of, it was a, I don't know what, a vaulted ceiling, where it comes down. So, but that was, I'll tell you how bad it gets. In that house, they had a hole in the wall in the hallway. They would come out of this is in the house, going from the wall into the house. They came out of the hole, would run down the steps into the kitchen, and scream at the woman in the kitchen, the wife. I said, this is unacceptable. The flying squirrels are they're like little kittens, like.
yeah, they chase you around. They just
Yeah.
like to be with people.
I know. But you don't want them in your house.
No.
In fact, I had a pest control guy come from South Jersey, and when I didn't know it was pest control, and I said, well, what are you using it for? He said, flying squirrels. And he said, my kids are playing with them, and my wife is complaining, I'm in pest control and I can't get rid of it. I said, what the heck? But he wouldn't use it for there's a lot of money in trapping, and they try trapping all the time. There's a lot of money in that. But the strobe light, I'd more or less like to get in and blow them out. That's what it does. I'm sorry, but 1 second.
Should the homeowner really stay away from the actual squirrels? How dangerous is that?
They've got very sharp teeth.
Yeah, and they can read,
Very.
and they can read your body language too. If you go at them and you're aggressive, you make a lot of noise and stuff, they're gone. Anytime I've ever climbed up a ladder or something, like I'm banging the ladder around, they're gone. That's the trick. The trick is to present yourself as a threat to them, and then they leave.
Naturally, we are a predator. So.
Pardon me?
Naturally, we are a predator.
Yeah, we're a predator. They see us as a predator, right?
Presence will scare them. For the flying squirrels, not because they are gregarious. They like associated with other beings. So the best way is probably being unfriendly.
Oh, that's right. You want to you want to be aggressive with no matter what squirrel. You want to be very aggressive. You have a question? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my problems with a family of red squirrels.
Yeah.
They said noise, and you change their environment.
Pardon me?
Noise.
Oh, noise. Oh, yeah.
Change the environment to make them not necessarily responsive to your home.
I'll tell you what. I agree. If you want to, to solve your own problem, whatever works. That's my thing. But I've gotten in, like Deb Welter's problem was astronomical. She was actually feeding the squirrels still, which on the deck, because she's an animal rehabilitator.
Yeah.
And when they're that aggressive, you need something as powerful as the strobe to blow them out. They were vicious there. There were 2 different families going through each gable vent. The gable vents eventually were chewed up like the one you saw. Now, everything had to come across slowly. Put the strobe lights in there one time, put a tube in, a little bit of goo. Put the tube, had it screened, the whole gable vent was screened. By the time I got through with the process, those wooden slats in the gable vent, they were right down as a big pile of wooden chips. They were so angry and vicious that I was coating this. Now the real trick of it is if you have a nest that's inaccessible to noise or even the light, and that's in the attic someplace, you want that goo to be tracked back to the nest.
I know originally I had like a woodpecker hole.
Yeah.
And then I did see later when it was enlarged, and it seemed like the squirrel came in.
Oh yeah, they make it bigger, and you can see them, the chew marks. In fact, that's how I gauge the seriousness of a problem, by how I gauge how aggressive the chewing is, and whether the chewing has become a slot. When it becomes a slot like that farmhouse in Boyertown, I knew I was up against some really aggressive squirrels with a long-term problem, really.
So currently I have something maybe this big around.
Yeah,
It's more like a bird hole, right?
yeah, that's
It could
yeah.
also be a flying
That's a
squirrel.
well.
Yeah.
It could access for a flying squirrel, but that's a woodpecker hole right there. Almost likely. Do you have a squirrel problem now where they're in your attic someplace?
Well,
Or
I hear voices up there around
yeah,
2 o'clock
That-
in the morning.
at 2 o'clock. Okay,
So that would be flying squirrel, because
Yeah.
gray squirrels aren't active at night.
that's right. That's flying squirrel.
Red squirrel.
I use their energy and their assertiveness against them. They're very intelligent and they want to come. All right, come on in, but you're going to be dragging the goo with you every time you come. If you have a lot of holes, go back to the picture of the one that has the paintball. Okay, this guy, he was so frustrated that he got out a paintball gun and he was shooting it. It was all over his house. Looked like that. So I wanted to show you this for this purpose here. This is not a paintball. This is identical to this. This is another hole. I had to limit to one hole, okay? When I first got there, the squirrel was sticking his head out the hole where the tunnel is, So I said, okay, so what I do is this. I take this cloth, and I have this stuff called shake-away fox powder, okay? I put it in the cloth, wrap it up, stuff it in the hole, and then I put goo on the outside. Now, what squirrel is stupid enough to go into a hole that smells like a fox den, So they leave that alone. Then at first I'm putting no goo on. I'm letting them come and go. That's the whole idea. Okay, you want to come and you can go, come and go as much as you want. Then I increase the goo. So I increase the goo. They've made their own nightmare again. Now this particular place, the guy had. It's funny how I used their. Yeah, that's it. You had to be like 3 steps ahead of them. So I went to the guy. I said, "Well, what do you hear?" And he says, "I hear a little bit in the back room." I said, "Well, you got a light back there. Are you kidding me?" He had unplugged it. I said, "Well, plug the thing in." He had a little tiny attic. I said, "Leave it on."
The other thing is someone that I had referred to you that bought the Evictor online
Yeah.
turned it off at night. And it's like, no, leave it on.
Leave it 24/7.
Yeah.
Now, I did have one woman she got 3 years out of a bulb because her bedroom was right next to this small attic and she could hear them then and she would just plug it in when she heard them, blow them out again, but that's the exception rather than the rule. The rule is that you're going to mess up. You're not going to have it on at the right time. You're 24/7 every day of the week. That's the bottom line with this. You leave it on because they'll come back and they'll be looking, whether you know it or not. I know it because I've been into this, is that they're watching your house all the time. And you're outside your house, they're looking in the window. They know when you're coming and going. That's how intelligent they are. So here's some of the things you may not realize they do, but they do. It took me 2 years to troubleshoot a job where I could find no opening in the house. And finally, there was some in the garage, there was some insulation that come down. I said, "That's it." She said, "But I don't have any windows or doors, only the garage door itself." I checked the garage door, they actually came under, lifted it up and would come in. And then I took the play out of it and then put a steel plate behind it so they couldn't come in.
After you finished doing the job in our house,
Mm-hmm.
at Christmas time, I went upstairs and got out all the Christmas ornaments. Half of them were eaten up and made into little nests. The other half had peanut shells in them and everything. We had to redo all the wiring up in the attic, and we now have a metal roof.
Oh, that's a good thing, yeah.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
I had a metal roof.
Oh, they,
I had cedar shakes. I put 2 roofs on my house, and then I put a metal roof.
And
it
you
was
still-
really quiet for a while.
yeah.
And now it's noisy.
That's
again.
that's typical of if you've had a problem. See, people don't realize the odor of their occupation is coming out. And so with flying squirrels, about half of them I never could find the holes. So if you can't find the holes, what else are you going to do? So I put the strobe lights in there, and because they're so much more sensitive to a light, it blows them right out. They're gone. That guy never even questioned. He calls me up and says, "Replace all the bulbs." I said, "Well, why?" Some of them are probably says, "No, just replace them all." So I go in his house, replace all the bulbs, 6 bulbs. No more flying squirrels anymore. Why don't we pass this around the room so you get the feel of it?
This will work for raccoons too?
It does, but it takes longer. It takes sometimes like a week and a half or something. But like I was saying before, you have to actually screw the chain to the rafter because they'll pick it up and move it around. In fact, let me turn that on for just 1 minute. You can see. Is anybody sensitive to strobe lights?
Yeah. It's obnoxious. It really is. And boy, does it work.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, in a perfectly dark room, it's really amazing.
Oh, you want it
It's
to
irritating. Yeah.
Light being visible from outside the house.
Sometimes, yes.
You can
The guy, yeah. The guy, or I'm doing the job, it's in his soffit, and it's definitely visible. I said, this is going to bother your neighbors? He said, I don't care. You know, he went there. I want them gone. They're
We can
gone.
see ours coming up the driveway, but it works so well, you know.
With wildlife,
Yeah.
wildlife is very routine oriented. They are very set in their ways.
Yeah.
So if you disrupt their habitat, if you disrupt their schedules, if you disrupt their way of living, they don't want to be there anymore.
You know, what you're saying is true. Now, did you ever go down Ridge Pike? I did a lot of townhouses there, and there was one townhouse that had no problem at all. I said, what's different? Now, I didn't see what's going on. Here, they were using it for storage, but she was up there almost every day. So the difference is whether you're using that facility or not. The squirrels know if you're using it or not.
Does it make sense? I don't have a problem yet with the squirrels, but I got tons of squirrels.
Yeah.
How about if I catch them and kill them?
Okay, now, yeah, well, let's go through that.
Or they do create a
Okay, now let's say that's your method. Okay, now here's what happens if it's an attic situation. The very first, can you go back to the very first one? Okay, what she did is that this woman in this house, she trapped and killed them, but she didn't know that she had trapped and killed the parents, and the babies were up there. She said, well, can you go get the babies? I said, I can't get in a space this small. There was a stain on the ceiling. I said, I can't get into that corner. I said, you've got me all messed up because they would grow and they would take the babies out eventually, and they would take them out like through the tube, or they would go. So that's another bad thing about trapping. I was down to Jersey and did his squirrel, I fixed his squirrel problem. And here, I said, it's awful quiet around here. How come those squirrels? And he said, well, I was shooting them last year. So I said, okay. I said, you did me a disfavor because I depend on what I do to be embedded in their memory so that memory gets passed on. And I like to give the scenario that, okay, if you put food in an attic, squirrels are going to come in. But if you have something obnoxious, they're going to remember that, and you're going to force them out, and they'll remember that. Because some jobs I do, I can see a decrease right away in the squirrel population and then nothing. And then that can go on sometimes, even if I don't have the light on, which I recommend putting all the time. The memory is embedded now, and all that gets passed around. That's how the squirrels operate. Now, also, one thing too, I might mention, I was thinking of this guy. You familiar with James Hare? Have you ever heard of this guy? He's a professor at the University of Manitoba. Squirrels have such advanced systems. I mean, they climb anywhere they want. They can chew. They chew at the rate of 5 bites per second, and their biting power is 5,000 pounds per square inch. And the reason you never see them chewing, like that first video of them chewing into a place, is because they communicate a warning to each other. Well, they always have a lookout in an ultrasonic voice. And James Hare, who I know and we've talked, he found that out. They had ground squirrels, and he said all of a sudden one was making a motion with its mouth, but nothing was coming out, and all the rest of the ground squirrels left. And he said, what was going on there? So he brought out his ultrasonic detector to use for bats, and here they shout out a warning to the squirrel who's doing the chewing with an ultrasonic voice. So that's why you don't see them doing the chewing. That's how sophisticated their systems are.
The thing with your idea, nature abhors a vacuum. You kill them and others are going to move in. It's like you kill a mother and there are babies in your attic, you've got rotting flesh in there.
That's right.
That are going to be a bigger problem than the squirrels.
What they will do is they'll migrate. If you have a squirrel problem and you get rid of them all by one way or another, they migrate from one section to the other. So 2 years from now, you have the same problem as you did before. Yeah. So now you see the beauty of blowing them out and put that memory in their brain. You see how that works?
Yeah,
there's a certain
places for them to live. You have to make sure your house isn't one of them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and believe it or not, now some jobs I've done where I blew them out, they go next door, but most of the time they don't. The only time they go next door, if the house is identical, they'll be able to pick out the same gable vent and they work on that. But most time that house in that story that you have, the other one, that one here, the Nutty War story, the next neighbor right next door had the squirrel problem, they thought. And it was only one little hole. I went and gooed the hole, and the squirrels never went back there. So they had one of the easiest problems right next to a 37-year problem. So how long did yours go on, Deb? I forget.
At least 2 years.
At least 2 years.
And we had the flying squirrels and the gray squirrels, so day
Yeah.
and night.
And
And
I
they-
think we solved it in, what, 2 months? or
Something like that.
Yeah.
3 months, something.
Because we had 4 different parts of our attic attached by soffits. We couldn't get to the soffits. We did the radio and lights up there, didn't do a thing. And Bill came in with the strobes. And of course, I don't want anything that's going to hurt the animals. Animals are my life. So Bill came up with a really good solution.
What I use as an indicator, because I have all the ladders, I have 40-foot ladders. I go and cover the whole house. Okay, how many holes are there? How aggressive? How many repairs have been done? You know, so I try to figure out. That tells me how bad the problem really was. One of the most amazing jobs I did was I was hired to just do a roof repair. And it's actually on North Wales Road. And it's an old farmhouse. And Tom worked. He helped me do the. I was up on the roof. I said, I don't want to come down to this roof again. I had a rock climbing harness, and I had a rope over the top, and I got up there, and I said.
The roof was like this.
So I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't know what the problem. They said they have a leak, and they did have a leak. They showed me what the leak was. I get up there, and there's a hole like this deep through the roof. I said, Tom, this is a squirrel. They have a squirrel problem that they didn't tell me about. It took a whole gallon of roof cement in that hole.
What do you think your success rate is?
Oh, it's 100%. Yeah, I'm probably the only one that I know of.
I have a couple of questions. Some of them were answered by your brochure. One was whether there's any fire hazard with the bulb, and it says no.
No.
Another was how many lights do you need for, say, an average attic, and you mentioned that. And what do you need in the way of an outlet, and should you have a switch on it?
You should have it, absolutely, because that job there, that the first one, the test case, I finally convinced her. I said I want 3 outlets. I have six lights up there, 2 per outlet, and I want them to be GFCI outlets because they chew anything, cause of ground, kicks out, and then also I have a switch right at the top of the steps because what they were doing, they couldn't navigate. They have the heating system up there, couldn't navigate through with the lights on, and then there was no way to turn them off. I said, you have to do this for me. You have to put a switch up there. That's the best way, a switch that turns your outlets off in different sections of the attic. And that works the best. And so I'm looking at a lot of different things. So sometimes a couple lights will drive them out. Sometimes you need to put them in, in the corners. If they've been there for any length of time, you have to say, I don't think so. You're not going to be there, and you're gone. That's my attitude. When I put those lights in there, I want you gone. But like I say, never ever do I close the holes, entirely for at least a month. Never do that. And I try, this is where I'm monitoring system, I try to leave that one hole easily and make it a main hole. They're coming in and out, they're picking up the goo, they're telling me how aggressive they are by how much fur is left in the goo. When I see that I have goo in this hole and I see that the goo is still clear, there's a couple jobs I go back and check on, I know there's no problem because they're not coming in or out. So not only do I blow them out, I have a way to monitor their activity. And you can solve your own problem. If you have a hole and you know it, you start putting it around there. And I hate to say it, but with flying squirrels, it actually can have really bad consequences as far as their ability because their webs are going to stick. So it actually can be lethal for them because they'll be crashing into trees.
Because with us, you didn't put the goo initially. You had the strobe lights on, and you put those
I put that in.
To watch.
Yeah.
Because we knew we had flying squirrels in there.
Yeah. So that was only like the very last to monitor the activity.
The other thing is with the strobe lights, you can also see if you go around, turn off all your house lights and go out at night with the strobe lights on, you can probably see where the holes are that you probably couldn't see before. Because it's so bright, it's so much brighter than any other light up there.
I used to be able to sit on the deck and watch them. It was like a landing strip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah.
The deck, it was amazing.
How about bats?
Don't work on bats. And it made it worse. I tried it, and it drove them further into the walls. People come up and said, get it out. So I went and took it. I said, turn it off, and I'll come get them.
The big thing is bats don't chew anything. They don't
Yeah.
chew wood, they don't chew wires, they don't do anything like that.
And-
We
They
want
won't cause
bats.
any problems. And they're good for you. They're
The
keeping
bats,
they're good.
because
Yeah.
they eat the
insects.
insect.
Yeah.
I had the second test unit in my truck, okay? And I was in a job that was totally unrelated to squirrel eviction. I was at a woman's house this is on Johnson Road about 12 years ago. Her house burnt to the ground. And then she had the new one built, and I was at her location. And she said, she came right out of the blue, she came up to me and she said, she had lost her husband in the fire, and yeah, it was terrible. And then she said to me, she said, the fire marshal told me that the squirrels had chewed the wire. They must have found the squirrel right on the wires in the attic and caused the house to burn down. And I had the second test unit in the truck. I said, I can't believe you're telling me this, because it's hard in the beginning to create a product and test it and follow through. I said, now you've given me a reason to really follow it through. There's really nothing out there that does what this does. I mean, it's amazing to me. I had them for 25 years in my own attic, so I have 4 in my own attic, and it works, and they're gone.
You had it in your house?
Yeah, because I have a twin house. I could not control them coming through the soffit. And at times, the soffit was, the house was vacant next door. What am I going to do? So I thought, okay, this works for everybody else. Took it there with it. And then, this is the weirdest thing. I said, there's no noise. I don't know, like you can sleep in the morning. And I'm thinking, I actually kind of miss them. In the fall, you always hear, you always knew it was fall when you heard them,